Hey everyone, Susan Black here. Sorry about the time delay. I know I had originally said that I was going to come live about 4 o'clock. Let me fix this a little bit. And as you can see, 4 o'clock didn't really work. But anyhow, the title of the Facebook Live tonight is, How Did I Know Exactly? And the question has come up before about, with my husband having a diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's disease, is how did I know? What were the signs and symptoms? Everybody worries about being forgetful. You go into a room and you can't remember why you came in. You put your car keys down somewhere and you don't know where they are. That's normal. We all do that. A lot of times it's because we have so many different things on our mind. But Alzheimer's is different. It's not just forgetting simple things like where your car keys are or things, or what you came into a room for. It's more complex than that. We had a fairly busy day today. I was going to have Pete come on live with me tonight, but he got outside and he mowed the grass. And I don't think the grass is going to be growing much anymore, but it needed a final trim. And so he is finishing up with that, and then he'll need to shower too. So he's not going to join us tonight, which is probably okay, because that way I can probably be a little more candid in my discussion with everybody. So the question is, how did I know? What were the first signs and symptoms? Now these are just very specific to us. I guess everybody is probably different. For me, are you coming out here, hon?
I got a blow.
Okay, go ahead.
Come on, girls, get inside.
So the very first thing that I noticed was Pete was 49. And it was around Christmas time, and we were having a gathering at our house. It was a Sunday school gathering, and Pete had read some information to me off of the internet, and he told me a story about something that had happened, and we talked about it. And then our guests arrived, and towards the end of the evening, he told all of them about the same story, and then 5 minutes later, he told them all the same story again, as if he had never said it. I knew that was a red flag. You're thinking, oh, well, that's just a one-time thing. But you have to keep in mind that my background is in neurology. I'm pediatric neurology, so of course you don't have to worry about Alzheimer's with children for the most part. There is a case where a 3-year-old recently passed away from something that's very similar to an Alzheimer's type disease. But was reading a lot about the brain and different neurological type conditions, and so I have that educational background behind me. Also, my mom had Alzheimer's. I started noticing the first signs and symptoms with her when she was in her 60s, and she did pass away in her 70s. So I was very in tune to this. I was starting to notice some things, but one of the biggest things for me is a personality change. Pete's personality changed. Pete is normally a very easygoing, mild-mannered type person, but his personality became to be a little more agitated, a little more irritated, started cussing a little bit more, and that's not like him. And I noticed too that for somebody who's as highly educated as he is, he's an electrical engineer, that he was losing what I consider to be common sense type things, that his reasoning skills were not what they used to be. And at that point, we had been married for a good 28 years or so I knew him really well, so I could tell that things were changing. And he was very handy around the house all the time, could do all kinds of different repairs, did a lot of help with Habitat for Humanity. And he was starting to make mistakes, or it was taking him much longer than it normally would take him to do what would be considered an easy home repair. One of the things that sticks out in my mind the most is we were having some issues with our laundry sink in the laundry room, and I think he had to replace some washers or something on it. Took him all day, I think, to do it. Got it all done. And the next day, I think I was trying to run some hot water to scrub the floors, and I was not getting hot water. And so I went out to Pete and I said, hey, listen, is something wrong with the hot water heater? I can't get any hot water. And he said, no. He said, well, what side are you turning on? I said, the left side. He said, the left side, that's not the hot water, that's the cold water. And I said, no, hot is on the left. He goes, when did they change that? And he was serious. He had no idea. And to this day, the shower in the guest bathroom is hooked up backwards. So when our guests come to shower, I have to tell them, make sure you turn the faucet to the right to get your hot water. So anyhow, things like that started to happen. He also had some issues with work. Of course, he wouldn't share a lot of things with me because I think anybody would be frightened as well when you start thinking, things are a little bit off. But one time he was supposed to be at a meeting and he showed up and he was the only one there. He had the days wrong. Another time he flew all the way to New York for a meeting, and he went to the location that they always have the meeting at, somewhere in upstate New York. He went to that location, and again, nobody was there. Well, he couldn't keep up with the email chain. Somewhere in that email chain, the location of the meeting was changed, and it was 2 hours further north. So he flew all the way to New York, missed the meeting, and was still 2 hours away from where they needed to be. So when those types of things started happening, I thought we need to do something about this. So the very first time that something I noticed, like I said, at the Christmas time, we repeated the story. Again, since I work for a neurologist who is a UAB physician, she got me in with a UAB neurologist who deals with Alzheimer's in Birmingham at UAB. Come here, doggies. And we did some testing, did all kinds of things. He did neurocognitive testing, which he absolutely hates. It's a several hour-long test where they ask you all these different things. You have to do puzzles and all this kind of stuff, and he hated it. So what came out of that was the areas that if you were going to be showing signs of Alzheimer's or dementia, you should have struggled in a certain area. He did really well in that area. The area that he should have done well in, he struggled in. So they were all baffled. So here we were at a memory institute, at a major teaching hospital, and they were baffled. So they just said pretty much go home, exercise, eat right, the typical stuff you hear at your yearly exam anyhow. But things were progressing. Things were still going on. I was noticing things. I started keeping track of different things. Went back to the doctor, and he agreed that there must be some sort of an issue. So when Pete was about 53, he was started on Alzheimer's medication. Did I notice any change? No, but those medicines aren't going to make you better. If anything, they help slow down the process. So he was able to continue to work, but again, things continued. We were not seeing a neurologist at any point. And then when Pete was about 55, I said, we got to do something. This is really bad. So he did not want to go back to UAB. So I said, let's go ahead and we'll just see a local neurologist. I knew that was going to be a bad decision, but we saw a local neurologist. They did all kinds of testing, which we had already done before. And in my opinion, that was just to rack up the charges for the insurance company. And sure enough, when all was said and done, they said, we don't know what's wrong. But his scores had dropped. And I said, yeah, but it's not of concern. I said, but are you comparing these scores for a person that's in their 50s who's highly educated? You're giving him the same exact test as you're giving an 85-year-old person who didn't complete more than 3rd grade from the farm. Yeah, we kind of take that into consideration. And I still was not happy. So we went back one last time. And they still said, well, they looked me in the eyes and said, Susan, there is nothing wrong with your husband. Well, I busted into tears. I knew there was something wrong. They didn't live with me, and they weren't willing to help me. So the neurologist here in Huntsville said, do you want me to make a referral to you to UAB? I said, yes, we're going back to UAB. We went back to UAB, scores had decreased, still didn't have a definite diagnosis because the only way you can get a definite diagnosis is with a PET scan, a lumbar puncture, or after you pass away. So I was ready to do the PET scan. Let me know how much it is, I'll pay for it. Well, at that point it was about $8,000. Okay, well maybe we won't do that, but let's come up with a different plan. So our plan was we got into a clinical trial. And in the clinical trial, one of the parameters, the very last thing, is a PET scan. You start off doing an MRI, blood work, what else did we do? We did some CAT scans, we did EKGs, all different types of things. And if they showed the parameters that they thought were good for the clinical trial, you went on to the next phase. And the very last phase was the PET scan. And I had talked about the PET scan before, that it's a very expensive test. It's time sensitive. And the radioactive isotope that is used for that in this area is mixed up in Louisiana. So as soon as UAB calls, the mixture is made and it's sent over via car to UAB, and you only have a certain time window of when it is still considered good and active. And so they want to make sure you're going to come. And so Pete and I did get there with no time to spare, basically. I shared that story before at one point because something that was going on. I was over 100 miles an hour down 65. I was getting him to that scanner, and he was going to get that PET scan. And he did have the PET scan, and we did get a definitive diagnosis that he does have Alzheimer's. To this day, it's continuing to advance. I'm noticing things on a daily basis, and each day you grieve a little bit more as you lose different milestones. But I hope that answers your question. The biggest thing I can say, if you're concerned about yourself or you're concerned about a loved one, is personality change is something that's very, very key to this. And also major remembering issues. It's not, like I said, remembering where your car keys are. It's remembering that you were supposed to go to your brother-in-law's birthday party or something like that, and all of a sudden you just didn't show up. You didn't know when it was, or you showed up at the wrong day. It's big, significant things like that. So if you have any more specific questions or anything like that, I'd be happy to help you, to talk with you. I feel as though my calling right now in life is to help get the word out about early onset Alzheimer's. I think power is in education, and a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of people in their 40s and 50s who are suffering with this terminal disease. And I want to help get the word out so that we can educate more and we can get people treated maybe a little bit earlier. We definitely want to find a cure of some sort, but November is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and I've got my purple shirt on there. But if you have any other questions, please share them with me, because I'm more than willing to share. Pete has gotten much better about being open about his diagnosis, so we'll get him on here another time too to share about but what he thought were maybe some of the first signs and how he felt when he first got the diagnosis. But until then, remember to enjoy your journey.